All right, hey, welcome back
to the Trending Podcast, episode 2. Special guest today, Seth Fancy.
Well, regular guest,
yes.
Who didn't make it. Hey, let's see if we can do a slow clap on our clap.
I'm into standing ovation here.
Me too.
Wait, hold on. Mine's gonna die out.
Be seated, everyone.
Be seated.
All right, so
no
ready?
pictures. Yep.
All right,
do
see
it.
if we can line it up. Ready?
Slow clap. There we go. That guy actually kind of sounds like me on there.
That sounded pretty good, actually. That was pretty good.
There we go.
There it is. Welcome back.
Round of applause.
Welcome back,
That's
people.
for you, people. That's for you. That's the favorite part. Listen. The app is very disappointed that we're not using it anymore.
Yes. Seth, welcome.
Excited to be here.
To
Seth is
your first episode.
Quite the journey to get here.
Man.
It's been quite a journey. Yeah, it was supposed to be in episode 1, but my car decided to blow up on the way here.
Yeah.
So.
I don't believe you.
The worst.
Well, Brent, believe me, because I brought a souvenir today. This
Show us the
right
money.
here is a piece of my engine
All right.
from last Monday.
I shouldn't laugh.
And so blew a hole out of my engine. And anyways, but
you were just redlining
on the way to the
the
podcast.
Cobequid Pass.
I was going through the Cobequid
You
Pass.
were trying
and
to
then
make records through the Cobequid Pass.
I was.
Cobequid Pass.
I was.
Did the
that 4
Cobequid
times
run
fast.
in 3 parsecs?
Under 12 parsecs.
12 parsecs?
I think it was. Under.
Is that how
12.
many parsecs the
I'm pretty sure
the
the Millennium
Millennium
Falcon
Falcon did the Kessel run?
Because they say
Kessel run?
14. Kessel Run and 14 parsecs.
Okay.
Which was in Solo, by the way.
Really?
We get to see the actual Kessel Run.
Never saw that movie.
Really?
Is it worth seeing?
Definitely, 100%. I bought it.
I trust you.
It is better. Like, when I went with low expectations, it was really good. We didn't come here to talk about Star Wars, but
We could.
it's actually
We
good.
could probably put in some time.
Take some time.
I highly recommend Solo. I enjoyed it a lot.
Seth, you and I could talk Patriots.
We could.
There
We
you go.
could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they win or lose
They won
the
last
Monday
night.
night football game?
They won last night. They won 25-6.
Tom Brady's
against
still not
Buffalo.
retired.
Not yet, no.
Still going.
Nope. No, it's still going well, still going strong.
The GOAT.
He's the GOAT, man.
No question.
He's the GOAT. Absolutely.
No question.
So-
We,
But how long
we
can he
actually
be the
had
GOAT?
Tom Brady on episode 1 of the Trending Podcast.
Yeah, that's right. He was here.
Our producer David, who's hidden this week.
He's
I
still
did
here.
hear Tom Brady was here.
He was.
I
yeah.
missed
He was
that.
so
It's
good
too bad.
looking
He
that
is.
he made me
He made
look
us
bad.
look
So
bad, didn't he?
he's
We had to
behind
kick
the
him-
screen.
We had to
this
kick him
time.
out and get
Yeah.
someone that's just slightly better looking than us.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
okay.
No offense, Seth.
You're still better looking.
Who's your
Well-
celebrity look like, though? Because we established this last time. Brent's Leonardo
You know-
DiCaprio. I'm Drew
Well,
Carey.
no.
Is that what you said?
It's not what I said. That's what somebody else said.
No, these are things people have told us.
I've
I've been
been
told many
told.
times that I look like Drew Carey, especially when I used to have a buzz cut with
It's
bangs
the darkroom glasses.
when
too.
I was in.
Yeah.
You're just fully
Yeah,
committed
thicker
to it.
glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
So people have told me this, and I'm not proud of this, but people have said.
I'm not proud of mine either.
Well, because people think I look like I have eyeliner on all the time. It's just my eyelashes are so
okay.
dark.
Sure.
The guy
But there have
Green
been
Day?
people who
Rimmel,
thought
it's Rimmel London, isn't
no,
it?
they thought no.
Is that actually an eyeliner kind?
No,
I feel
like,
I feel
honestly,
it really
Rimmel
is.
is
honestly,
makeup.
Rimmel?
actually two people: Chris Pine,
Oh, there you go.
Okay,
That's a good
yeah,
one.
Star Trek
and
guy?
Adam Lambert.
Okay.
So,
Adam Lambert.
I'm serious.
Why
Like,
is everybody else's celebrity looking like
I don't
sexy?
know.
American Idol.
Mine
Yeah, I was
is
American Idol
not.
Adam Lambert.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
anyways,
Adam
but-
Lambert.
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
That's
So
good.
back to the Trending Podcast. We
Yeah,
are.
here we go.
As first episode was a lot of fun. Had a lot of good feedback.
It was, yeah.
Lots
I think
of
it went
views.
well. Lots of views. People enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it was good. So it's just another way to have a little more discussion and conversation surrounding some of the things we're talking about at King's
Exactly.
Church in this season during our series. And Seth and King's Church Halifax been tracking along. I'm heading there, doing a few myself.
Couple
Seth's
weeks.
been doing some. Seth's
Yeah.
going to be been with us as well. So it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, awesome.
It's been a
Yeah.
good. So we want to talk today about some of the stuff we've been talking about, though. So when this podcast drops, we'll have covered conversations surrounding, politics. We talked about a couple weeks ago.
Culture wars.
Culture wars.
Yep.
Whose side are you on?
That's right.
And then Seth, you brought a message to us just about justice and God's heart for the oppressed, equality. That whole conversation
a
that's
big conversation.
very
Yeah.
hot in our culture, and so figured we could have a little more dialogue about that today.
Yeah, let's do it.
Not just give our opinion, but maybe some biblical opinion on some of these things. So
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, why don't we jump first into what we did the longest ago?
Yep.
Kind of get back on on track with the conversation surrounding the culture wars.
Yeah.
Talked about, are we left or are we right? Are we Team Trump or Team Trudeau?
Who should we vote for?
Yeah. Are we?
All that good
which
stuff.
Community are we part of?
That's right.
Are we?
What team are
we
you on?
straight pride? Man, that's still blowing up in the news.
It
the
is.
straight pride thing?
Right.
It is. We saw that in Nova Scotia.
From good old
Did you?
Chipman.
That's national, isn't it? Is it on national?
Chipman,
New Brunswick.
made
It wouldn't surprise
national
me.
headlines.
Unbelievable.
For the first time
Probably
ever.
first. Not the reason you want
This
to be
was
in the
probably
headlines.
all staged just to get Chipman on the map.
Maybe it was. Maybe it was this conspiracy. Like they were actually
Guaranteed way to get attention.
It actually wasn't the dumbest thing ever to do. It was the smartest thing. They're like, you know
Right.
what we're going to do? We're going to make a straight pride flag. People are going to accuse us of being really ignorant and insensitive.
But they'll know where we are.
We're just going to put Chipman on the map.
We're not
son.
giving Chipmanites enough credit, I don't think.
Could have been. If you're watching from Chipman, we love you.
We do.
Chip maniacs.
If you're the guy who hung the straight pride flag,
We love you too, man.
yeah, we do.
We do.
We do. We think that was a dumb move. But
Right. We don't condone your actions.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just not for
But we love you.
any pride flags. Like I think pride is probably a big problem.
Exactly.
Generally,
That's true.
by how I see the Bible. But
That's right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Stop it with the pride stuff.
Yeah,
But anyway,
pride.
yeah. So politics, culture wars. Yeah, we had an awesome talk about this.
We did.
With our message we had here with Brent, and so I think the biggest thing for people that when we're coming out of a conversation like that, right, is so we talk about how I remember you specifically said, Brent, like that we don't have like a party. Like our goal shouldn't be to say, which party am I a part of, and like that's how I find my identity. Like that we have, and you use specific language as saying like we have one king, and that's Jesus.
Right.
Right. So every decision we make, like political, otherwise, voting, like that's all informed by, again, the Bible and our relationship with Jesus and what he means to us. Right.
Yeah.
Now, someone had a question, I think, out of that was really good. That was, okay, so if we say that and it's like, that we're, our king is Jesus and he is, our source of everything and he's where we find our identity. Like
We're for the kingdom.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anything.
Like
Yep.
that's, I'm a member of the kingdom of heaven. I'm not worried about being Canadian or American or if I voted for Trump or Trudeau or for Gallant or for Higgs or any of that. Right. So, but then does someone who come to that conclusion to say, okay, well, I just won't worry about things like that at all. Like I won't even ever consider like Trump or Trudeau or politics or who I vote for. Like
Right.
can a Christian be in politics? Right? If we're members of the kingdom of heaven,
Okay.
like what if a Christian felt called to, be a public servant or whatever and serve in politics? Like,
So they're kind of asking, like, based on that, it's probably easy to run with what I said and just kind of maybe excuse yourself entirely from the political discussion.
Yeah,
Like, hey,
right.
well, I just don't care about, kingdoms of this world.
and people do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they do.
maybe
Quite a bit.
where should we land on, what does it mean to be a citizen of heaven who's a citizen of Canada?
Right.
Yeah.
Or a citizen of Halifax or a citizen of St. John? What does that
Totally.
look like?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
And,
great.
and how do we walk that line, right? Because it is a balance, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
That's good.
I'll start in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is I don't think being a Christian excuses us from making an impact or an input or being participants in the culture we live in. I think it actually requires us to. Mm-hmm. I don't think we have the luxury is not the word, but maybe like the excuse to just say, well, I'm just waiting until Jesus comes back and I'm saved. And, my hope's not here, it's in heaven, which
Right.
I think those things are true. But I think actually if you believe...
Escapism?
Yeah, escape.
That's like a thing,
yeah,
right?
there's
Like,
this whole
I'm just
idea.
waiting to escape this
I'm just,
world and this horrible
gonna-
life so I can go be in heaven with
The rapture's
Jesus.
coming.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
nothing matters. I think that's the actual opposite of what Jesus prayed about, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Right.
As a believer, my job is to exhaust every opportunity and resource I have to see that the kingdom of heaven, the influence and culture of heaven breaks in the here and now.
Now.
So
Like
I
today.
can do that
Yeah.
through how I vote.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right? Not that one party's going to
Right.
perfectly capture the culture of heaven, but my job as a believer is to say, okay, I have the opportunity to cast a vote.
Yeah. That's
Which,
right.
if I cast my vote, which party or which politician is going to, maybe open the broadest channel for kingdom values to flow through?
That's right.
Yeah.
Right? I think it actually requires us to be participants in the culture.
That's right. Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you on that. I really feel like, as you're talking, I was thinking of like what God says to the people of Israel when they're in Babylon, like they get exiled there, and what does He say? He says, "Seek the welfare of the city."
Right.
Like actually when you're blessing this place and they do well, you're going to do well.
Yeah.
Right. And so the political party or the king of Babylon became the mechanism in which God was going to do work through. Right. And so I'm with you 100% on that. I really feel like like we have a responsibility to that in a lot of ways. Again, though, we don't fit at all well. Like we made a. I know in the message, as Brent was preaching here, I was preaching in Halifax. Like we made that distinction that there are going to be some things that, we're going to agree with on the right and on the left, and there are things we're going to disagree on both sides. We just don't fit, right?
Yeah.
And I think,
and you shouldn't.
Yeah, you shouldn't fit.
If you find you fit nice, neat, and cozy into one kind of political system,
right. Oh,
if
I
it's
finally
not,
found it.
I don't think it exists in human institutions. I really don't. So I think we said it like, we follow a someone, not a system.
That's right.
A person, not a party.
That's right.
And it takes the shape of a person, not a platform. Right. And so, that's so crucial. Though I think it's actually biblical error to read like Revelation, like it talks in 1 Thessalonians about like the rapture. Which again, we could have a conversation about the rapture. I mean, there's been a lot made about that.
Could be a whole episode.
For those of you who are new to this, like the rapture, there's a lot of Christians who have a whole big exhaustive theology about how when Jesus returns, he's going to kind of catch everybody up and we're going to disappear. There's movies that have been made about it.
We're going to leave
whole
clothes
book
and dental
series.
fillings laying around everywhere.
Yeah, which again, I'm not saying the rapture doesn't happen, but I am saying what a lot of people assume is going to happen is actually more kind of Christian fiction, and people have drawn conclusions that just aren't in the Bible.
Right.
Right? Like even that thing in 1 Thessalonians where it talks about being caught up, like that's actually imagery of the victory of Jesus more than it is the literal thing that's going to happen. Will that happen? I don't know. Maybe.
Right.
But that's not the point of what Paul's trying to say. But anyway, I think it's biblical error to actually pull from that and say, this whole world's going to go to hell in a handbasket anyway, and
So forget
it's
about
going to
it.
get a whole lot
Right.
darker before it gets better.
Right.
I don't actually think that's what it says. Like, I think, again, there's going to be troubles. We've talked about that. But I think as believers, we're the ones that actually champion like optimism and that, no, we have hope, and actually there is a power, and actually there is truth, and actually there is justice, and there is a government that works, and all those things. I think we're the ones that champion that whole perspective that says, no, things don't have to get worse.
Yeah. And I think too, we've come a long ways in history as well. I mean, when you consider like what the early Christians were up against too, with parties and powers over them and whatnot, it was a lot of people make an argument against the Bible, say, well, it's not the same back then as it was today. In many ways, you could make a case it was worse.
Right.
And so we've actually come
They say
a
we
long
have it worse off today.
Yeah.
Like in our
Yeah.
culture.
Not at all.
It's harder.
Not even close. And so I think
Not true.
we are very much influenced too by media and about what we're being fed, I guess, through television stations and newspapers and stuff, and we got to be on the side that there's actually a lot of good happening in the world around us. God is doing some amazing things across the planet, and I think
to be objective, like it's super easy to get kind of caught up in the negative news cycle, right? Like that, for our people at King's Church, like just if you don't know this, like what you watch on the news, like that is a business.
It's true,
right? Like CNN is a business.
What gets the hits?
NBC
What
is
gets
a
the
business.
clicks?
Fox is a business.
Yeah.
And they are selling a product, and you are paying for it with your attention. Right, and so they are trying to serve that in a way. What they value is not ultimately getting you the news. Primarily, they value getting your attention. If they can get you the news in that, that's great. So you got to know, like, their values alone lend it towards sensationalizing things, towards catering the headlines in a way that's going to grab your attention. It's going to be clickbait. You won't believe what happens next. Like that's the world we
Click it
live
every
in.
time. Damn it.
Darn it!
Yeah.
I got to know what happens.
It's hard not to. It is.
Girl walks by cliff. You won't believe what happens next. But like you watch CNN.
yeah.
Even just their regular ticker on the bottom that's got like the headline. It's in bright red, like crisis mode. Everything's a crisis.
So
and it could say like
sensational.
9-year-old bakes cookies for grandma, but it's like, whoa, like everything is over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's actually created a world, I think, where a lot of us assume that things are a lot worse than they actually are.
Yeah.
I think we actually think that things are more intense than they are. Again, there are a lot of terrible things happening in the world.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
let's not play.
But I think it's fair to say they always have been, right? That it's
Right.
not that it's
Yeah.
not that we're at a more savage point in culture and in history than we ever have been, and there's more bad things happening. It's like, no, those things have been happening
Right.
all along.
All
like some
along.
things,
Absolutely.
a lot worse and more heinous things used to happen in the past that we've sort of moved on from and improved on
Right.
as a culture
Yeah.
Right.
and as people. Like you could almost say we're closer to the kingdom of heaven now than we have been at past points in history, right?
Right.
But it's all about what you choose to pay attention to, what's happening in the world. Like
Yeah.
you can search for good and for beauty and like images of God all around us, and you can find them if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Or you can find the opposite.
Yeah, I think it's more about, like, it's not saying that there's not good things or bad things happening. I think the point is, like, where Paul says, I forget what scripture it is, like, whatever is praiseworthy, whatever is lovely, whatever is true, whatever is good, think on these things.
That's right.
Like, we need to not be the people who allow, negativity and scarcity
That's right.
and fear mongering and all those things to really be the air we breathe. Like, we got to start, breathe in the air of heaven, breathe in the victory of Jesus, bring in optimism in every single day. A friend of mine actually sent me a link. He works for like an investment company, and he sent me a link to a study that was done. Let's see if I can find it here. And in the study,
I like studies.
they interviewed a bunch of people, and the whole thing is like, things are always bad, or so you might believe. And like, these are talking about investors, and like, they interviewed a bunch of people to try to get their perceptions. And so question one was, and I'll ask you this because it doesn't say the answer. Like, okay, how many of the
Being
world's
tested.
1-year-old children today do you think have been vaccinated against some disease? In the world, do you think it's 20% of kids have had access to vaccine, 50%, or 80%? How many kids on planet Earth?
What do you think?
I think my initial response would have been 20, but I feel like now because we're being asked this question, it must be higher, so I'm going to say 50.
I was thinking 50 from the start.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
My initial
yeah.
response would have been 20, though.
The answer is 80.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so 80% of
Man.
children in the world have access to,
That's incredible.
to vaccines.
Wow.
So now the point of the study.
Right.
So in all low-income countries across the world today, how many girls finish primary school? Is it 20%, 40%, or 60%? Again, everybody in the study guessed 20%, right? Well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of poverty in the world, and there is.
Right.
But again, it was 60%. It was
Yeah.
like, no, it was way higher than everybody thought, because the narrative you get is, well, everybody's in poverty and everything's falling apart and that everybody's mad. That's not actually true.
Right.
Of the world population, what percentage lives in low-income countries? If you take a guess, of all the people that live in the world, what percent of people live in low-income countries?
Dang.
That's a tough one.
I've heard, though, like, we're in the 1% here. Like, all of us, everybody around this table, probably everybody watching this podcast, if you've got
Or
access to the
1%,
internet,
yeah.
you got a car,
North America.
you've got a roof over your head, you've got plumbing,
Yep.
you're in the top 1% of the world, right?
Yep.
So,
You'd probably
gosh.
put Europe in that too. I'm imagine.
Yeah.
So low income. What percentage of the world?
Take a stab.
75%?
Live in low-income?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good estimate. I think I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna be.
It's gonna be lower
I
than
think
what I think.
I think it's. Yeah, I mean,
Now we know.
I want to go higher,
Right.
But I actually think it's gonna. I'm gonna say 70.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go 5% lower.
So the average person guessed 59% of the world's population lives in low-income countries. It's 9% of the world's population lives in low-income countries.
That's incredible.
Wow.
So again, it's a problem. And
That's
don't
very
hear
low.
me say
Yeah.
that that's not a problem.
But we
that-
should
that
never worry about that
9%.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I am saying, think how much you are trained to
Yeah, that's
focus
true.
on certain things.
Like it's
very
telling
true.
our answers.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
Like you are preconditioned to think based on everything
That's
you
right.
read and hear that things
Yeah.
are way worse than they actually are.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things. Like I know a lot of people don't like him, but Jordan Peterson keeps saying, he's like, hey, pump the brakes.
Yeah.
Actually, in human history, civilization, although it's not perfect and has its warts and issues, is better than it's ever been. Like
It's true.
poverty is actually lower than it has ever been in the
Yeah.
history of civilization.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there are some
Yeah.
good things that are happening.
There are.
That's important. I
Yeah.
think they go on in their study and they talk about like, the stock market, and this is it since the crash in 2009. they asked how many people do you think that the stock market is up since '09, or do you think it's kind of flat or gone down? And most people said flat or gone down, and it's actually up 203%.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
Wow.
So like that's an example though of how
Right.
it's so easy for our minds to get caught
It's like
up.
we
So-
see everything through a filter of
Absolutely.
negativity.
Yeah. So I think it's
we don't
super
have to see the
important
world
as
that way.
Christians though to be the first ones to pop up and say, okay, I'm just not gonna make my my assumption
Yes.
that this is true or that's bad.
Yeah.
I think we need to be the ones that look for the good in things.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Celebrate what's celebratory.
Yeah. I think we'd all go on the record to say like that we're not saying that there aren't issues and we don't have to worry about the issues.
Right.
Like nobody try and like peg us into that corner because that's not what we're saying.
Well,
but
right.
we are saying that there's so many good things that we can celebrate about the world, right?
Stay
Like,
tuned because we're going to talk about justice in just a minute.
exactly.
But
What a
we'll be right
response to all
back
that
after
should be.
these words
Yeah.
from.
So don't turn us off right now and
Not
say,
yet.
man, those guys don't care about people because.
But just
we do.
to kind of maybe finish off that topic, like the idea that we are so readily influenced by the media around us. Like media is a platform, right? And so,
Yeah.
don't you feel that like we as the church have an opportunity to redeem that platform in a sense, like to share from the church, from us, positive stories? Like that's testimony, right? To see that be able to influence from the church back into the culture in a sense, using that very platform. The reason I bring that up is interesting because in Halifax we had a guy come from a local newspaper, wanted to do an article on King's Church Halifax. Well, really on King's Church. And
awesome.
was really intrigued by churches, just some churches, growing up and being built when so many are shutting down in our region.
Right.
And so, and one of the things he noted that I thought was really interesting and telling was our social media presence as a church. And he said, you guys are doing things as a church that we don't see from churches. And he goes, I really appreciate the positive vibe, is what he said, that is coming from your media. And so I thought, wow, what a cool opportunity, because there's more people watching than we might think, even, to really share, stories that are really, really good news, about Jesus and about the gospel. And so I think we have an opportunity this day.
We do. We have a
right?
huge opportunity. Like if we take this conversation to the
Right.
media, like if they're selling bad news,
Right.
like, and that's the constant barrage of information. A lot of it's
That's their
either
clickbait.
bad news or even marketing.
Yeah.
A lot of marketing is, here's what you need because of, you don't have this,
Right.
you lack this.
Yes.
That sucks.
Yep.
If you had this, things would be better.
That's right.
Right? Like, what an opportunity for the gospel where you're like,
Absolutely.
this is like no strings attached,
Yeah.
good news where you can come and receive, that which you did not pay for. Like,
It was interesting. He goes, why do you guys use social media? And I said, well, you use it for your message and we want to use it for our message, and we believe our message is good news. And he was just kind of taken back by that. He's like, oh yeah, I never thought of that. And
Yeah.
so I think we have a real opportunity in our day as a church to really speak and be forthright about the gospel in our day. I think people are hungry for that.
So to be people
I like
who celebrate what's worth celebrating,
Yeah.
but also I don't want to be the type of person that just smiles and nods and affirms things
Right.
that need to be condemned.
That's right.
Right. So what does it look like then to
good.
navigate? Because this is a question here. As Christians, what should we celebrate? About leaders like President Trump or Prime Minister Trudeau. You have pretty
two
wide,
most flawless people on the
pretty
planet.
Wide
No one has any issues with either one of
spectrum
them.
of personality and politics.
Yeah.
What's worth celebrating? Like, how do we be people who celebrate that? Especially if like you're a person whose politics differ so much. Like, both those guys in different ways for
Right.
me. I'll be honest. With both of those guys, there's a lot of things that immediately chafe me, and I honestly don't look for things to celebrate first. I look for things to criticize.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think that's part of the dysfunction in the culture even now.
I agree.
Is like this whole system's built on tearing down the leader who's at the top and stuff. And actually the Bible tells us not to do that.
That's right.
Yeah.
The Bible tells us actually to pray for and
honor them.
submit and honor elected officials
That's
and
right.
people who God's put over you.
Yeah.
But what does that look like? Let me flip it on you guys.
Yeah.
What can you celebrate about Trump?
Wow.
What-
Yeah.
what-
Okay. What's it look like to honor Donald Trump as the president of the United States? right?
Or Justin
Yeah.
Trudeau?
Yeah.
Yeah, or Justin Trudeau as the Prime Minister of Canada. I'm married to an American, so I can speak to the Trump thing a little bit, and you probably can too.
Yeah.
You're
I'm from the States. I
Yeah.
grew up in the States, right?
Yeah.
So
America.
America. That's right.
You live in Alabama.
I did. I lived in
Roll
Alabama.
Tide.
And you want to talk about separation and lines, man? Down there, it's a
You have to have a MAGA hat, don't you, to live in Alabama?
you do.
Like a red
you
Make
have to have
America
it.
Make
you have to-
America Great
yeah,
Again. That's
yeah.
MAGA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Hashtag
you,
MAGA is Make America
it's
Great Again.
it's a requirement down there. You
Yeah.
know, so
If someone wants to
Anyways.
get me a MAGA hat,
we can get
I
you
will
one.
wear one.
We can get you
I
one.
would
Yeah.
wear that.
There's a guy at our church named Jock Hiltz. He gets them for free. So
Really?
we'll get you one.
Really?
Yeah.
For free?
He's got one in his red pickup he just bought, 1989 red
Nice.
pickup.
Wow, okay.
Puts his MAGA
That-
hat in front.
That tends to that seems to
we
fit.
know
So-
where Jock's politics lie.
We do.
we go.
We do.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
cool.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Trump, he goes after what he believes in. Like
Yeah.
he's not worried about
He's
critics. Let's say right.
That
Like he's
he's
just
not.
he's
No.
going like I can respect that
Yeah.
about anybody who says no. Whether or not I'm right, like this is what I believe and this is what I'm going after. So I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to do it. And if people have an issue with that, then they can have an issue with it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to pursue this
Yeah.
pretty relentlessly.
I think it's super important too on the Trump conversation
Yeah.
for Christians, especially Christians in the North, to not get caught up in, again, the media spin of him.
Right.
It's way too easy to just, get pulled into that. Trump's dumb. Like the dude is not dumb.
He's not dumb.
he's
Are you
not.
freaking kidding me?
He's orchestrated this.
Like,
He's
no.
orchestrated his way
He's
into
some-
the
you can
Oval
call him
Office.
some things, but the guy's not. He's not an idiot.
He's
Like,
been
not.
planning this for a long
Yeah.
time.
So I
Yeah.
just don't get caught up in
Yeah.
something that actually makes you sound more ignorant than
true.
not.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think there are a lot of things like if I've got some Christian friends that are. I actually know one pastor who's really close who knows Trump and it's like he's in the in, and he'd be the first to say, this guy is not somebody who we're holding out there as a model of what it means to be a Christian by any means.
Right.
I mean, the dude's got issues, period. Like he's
Right.
not the nicest human being that's ever lived. And however, I think there's a bunch of people in the States, especially like Christians in the States, and this is why I think a lot of the Christian right are so supportive of him is that, back to that kingdom hat thing, he is opening a wide gate for Christian values to have a place
It's true.
in the government.
Yeah.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
that's why so many Christians are
And wider than it has been in quite a while.
Like the whole even on the Supreme Court and stuff, you've got more people who are pro life than ever before, and that matters to Christians. And if it doesn't, I would think it should. You have so again, it's that people are behind him not because he's a great example of what it
Right.
means to be human, or as a nice person, or a
Right.
good husband, or any of those things. In fact,
Right.
they'd be the first, I think, to say, "Yeah, not so much."
Yeah.
But when it comes to what is he allowing happen in the country as far as governance goes, there's a lot of things about it that are really, really great. Like there's a lot of things, and I love it.
Yeah,
love
I think the latest job, numbers is that there's more jobs now than there
Yeah.
has been in the last 4 or 5 years, even since Trump's taken
Yeah,
office.
I see. I love some of the Christian values that are getting in Trump. I'm going to celebrate some things. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I also love that he has absolutely thrown the media and the kind of the political spirit into a complete frenzy and tailspin. Like
Right.
I love that he. Like if
I
you were
said
wa-
that the first day when Trump went way I was living in the U.S. when he first announced that he was going to run.
Okay.
Right.
And I remember saying on that day, what a horrible disaster that would be. But I looked at my wife and some friends we were with, and I was like, again, not saying that I couldn't vote anyway because I was Canadian, but I was like, I remember looking around and just saying, you know what, it was still a joke back then, but I was like, I hope he gets it, just because
Yes. Yeah.
it would blow up the entire
Absolutely,
system.
it
It would
would.
never be the
It
same.
would.
I remember watching CNN.
And then to all of our shock and awe, it actually happened, right?
Yeah.
I remember
Right.
watching the news that
Yeah.
night, And again, the media outlets were still doing their thing,
Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
no way,
Yeah.
no possible way it can't happen. And then
That's
just
right.
watching like the
Yeah.
whole system just begin to erode,
Yeah.
and then implode.
Well, you saw like people on
Was
live air who
fascinating.
couldn't talk; they were speechless.
Yeah, and,
to what was going on.
their bias was completely out there too.
Yeah.
Like I remember watching CNN.
Right, that's
Yeah.
what became
That's-
evident.
that's when it
say,
became
like,
real evident.
oh, we still have hope. What do you mean we still have hope? Aren't you the news?
Yeah,
Aren't you
Right.
like
Yeah.
nonpartisan?
supposed to be.
Yeah, and so like I loved that about it. That
I
it,
did too.
again, it exposed
I
back
did
to that
too.
conversation we just had about how conditioned we are by the media.
Yep. Mhm.
It exposed that okay, America is not in alignment on what governance looks like, and this isn't Hillary Clinton's not walking away with this.
That's right.
And it
You
was
know,
the
like-
first. It was the biggest step, I think, outside of that like media culture and that sort of frame and box that we've placed ourselves in.
Yeah.
And that almost like the media has corralled us into.
Yeah.
It was the first biggest like step and break away from that I've seen like in culture in a long time. Right. Again,
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying that like I'm not supporting him as a person, but I'm just saying like that
Yeah.
people showed that they could think outside of what the media was saying.
It was a wake up call, and it was,
And that's a good thing sometimes, I think.
So I celebrate that.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think the thing I struggle with Trump on is, I don't like that the way maybe he has been lumped in with the Christian community. From again, it's very hard to separate someone's personal morality and personality from their
right.
politics, and
Yeah.
maybe you can't even do that. And so that has complicated. I get why people are so in opposition. Like, how can you support someone who says that kind of thing about a woman,
Yeah.
or who has these affairs and no one cares? And I think that I struggle with. I also struggle with just like he is not helping by any means. Just
Yep.
the culture wars.
Yeah,
Like
that's
in
right.
I think he has an
he feeds
opportunity
off
to
it,
pump
too.
the brakes on just the back and forth and the targeting and stuff. Like, dude, you're in now.
Yeah.
I think some of that just really just small kind of.
Yeah.
He
I'm on
used the
Twitter.
culture wars to get.
He did.
Yeah, and
into
now,
the
but now
Oval
he needs to
Office.
let that go.
That's right.
Like,
Right,
and I
yeah.
feel like you're making it worse. You're stirring the pot still. You don't need to. Like,
yeah.
just lead and govern and get off Twitter. Like, get
Right,
off
yeah.
Twitter. Get
Yeah.
off. I really
And that would
dislike
take some
that.
self-control and some wisdom
Yeah, it would.
that
Yeah.
I'm not sure he has at
Yeah.
this point in his
So
life.
I feel like if I can
Right?
capture it this way, and I know we need to move on, but this
Yeah.
stuff's super interesting to me.
Yeah.
I think Trump
is.
getting into presidency is a symptom of where America was at in that
Yep.
point in time. But now I feel like he's not just a symptom, but some of the things that he's doing is actually creating more dysfunction. You know what I mean? Like in in how he's handling himself.
Yeah.
Again, I think he's done great things from a political governing standpoint.
Yeah.
But in that kind of just that social media,
Yeah.
that political warfare, the left and the right, and
Yeah.
the extreme leftists and the right wing
Yeah.
fanatics, and he's just throwing fuel on that fire. And I wish he wouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, even within their own, even in the Republican Party, even like the one he represents, there's just so many factions.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we hear stories all the time, whether they're true or not, about the different lines even inside the White House itself, right? And so,
It's going to be interesting to see what
It
happens in
is.
future elections, just because of this one,
Yeah.
like,
absolutely,
monumental shift that seemed to have happened.
it was
there,
big.
right?
Yeah.
It was
Here's,
big.
here's something I say too to a lot of Christians and a lot of people that like talk like, is it possible for Trump being as much of a mess as he is on a personal level, right? Like the words like burning pile of garbage have been used to describe him by people I know, like just because of his actions. Is it
Can we
possible
put
for
like a little thing underneath that? These do not reflect the opinions of King's Church.
Yeah,
Yes,
sure.
exactly.
I would
exactly.
not call that. I would not say that
Right.
about him.
I'm just
No,
saying
yeah.
these are things that
Yeah,
people say
people have
about
said
Trump,
worse
right? And
too,
so
yeah.
when people that have that stance talk to me about him and say like, how could anything good come of that? I also, again, like if we're looking at the Bible and building our lives on the Bible, I look at a lot of the things that happened in the Bible, and a lot of them happened through jacked up individuals.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So is it possible for me to look at and say someone who is messed up and has a lot of issues and does a lot of things wrong could be used to accomplish something that could further the kingdom of God, and God could actually orchestrate that to bring good into the world?
Yeah.
110%, because I've seen it happen time and time. Like I'm talking about like living my life on the Bible, and that happens so many times.
That's right.
I pump
in
the
there,
brakes
right?
on God is going to restore the world through America. I think
Yeah.
that I'm
Oh, totally.
definitely not there, but I am there on that. I do believe God is using God is at work in this.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it
Again.
goes back to show like some like Christians like. I don't think it's easy for Christians to look at the individual and say like, yeah, we could like that's what Christians should be like, but we could celebrate the fact that some opportunities and doors have been open for us that haven't been in a long time.
Right.
Like
Totally.
that's a godsend. That's
Yeah,
a gift from
absolutely.
God, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm saying. Where
I
like
agree.
He's going to work and God's will is going to be done, and He's going to make it happen. Doesn't matter who's in the office at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Like there's always hope for us.
Yeah,
that's
Like,
right.
we don't need to look at anybody who's in the office, whether it would have been Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump,
Yeah.
and say, "Oh, we're toast now." Like
Yeah.
it can't happen. Like
I think it's super interesting if you look at Donald Trump and you look at Justin Trudeau, and you have not only two
So similar.
two political
bosom buddies.
two like political minds like that are very different. Like you have one that's quite conservative and one that's quite liberal.
Yeah.
But you also have like a picture of, Trump has zero bedside manner, right? But maybe the results he's getting, if you can sift through some of the stuff, aren't so bad.
Aren't so bad, no.
Right.
And then you have maybe Trudeau,
Political
who's a lot
correctness.
smoother, but maybe he's not getting the same results.
That's
I mean,
right.
I'm interested to see the next election in Canada, just to see where we're at on that.
Both
But
countries are at a very interesting place.
super interesting.
Politically.
To celebrate Trudeau, let's celebrate Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got great hair.
He does.
He's got great hair.
He's definitely the better looking of the two
He is.
nation leaders right now.
By far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see too many
Yeah.
shirtless
Yeah.
photos of Trump floating around on the internet.
I
don't think we'd want that.
I don't
There's a
agree
few
with
Trudeau.
a lot of his politics. I don't agree with.
Yep.
But I can champion diversity. I can champion immigration.
Mm-hmm.
But again, back to the immigration thing. I think there's conversations to have around that
Yeah.
as well. Like, what's
Yep.
safe immigration look like? And
Yeah, it's
these are
huge.
really complex. Favorite thing I read all year. Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules for Life. I think it's worth checking
Yep.
out.
Yeah.
That's a great book,
Don't believe the hype about what you read about this guy. Like, read his book and then make an opinion.
Yeah.
Everybody watching this needs to come to the conclusion that you need to form your own opinions
That's
about
right.
everything in life, really. Like,
Yeah,
you don't take don't even take
Yeah.
our opinions.
That's
like,
right.
Like
Yeah.
you go research. Like, we're talking about something. You
Yeah.
research it and decide what you think for
Yeah.
yourself, and look beyond just what CNN says.
This
right.
might be a good mic drop thing.
Or
We can
Fox
move on
News.
to another conversation. But I love that Jordan Peterson said, like, in his book, he talks about, like, one of his chapters, and one of the rules is, like, clean up your room. And he
Yeah.
talks about this, like, we live in this world where you've got everyone has an opinion, and they're actually making broad opinions on highly complex, multifaceted, multi-layered socioeconomic systems. And he's talking about his students at his university. He's like, I have these students that can't even clean their rooms, and they're talking about how to fix Congress and how to fix a whole country. And he's like, let's start with you take a shower, and let's start with you
Regularly.
cleaning up your world
Yes.
before you start
Yeah.
fixing these very complicated systems, right? Like, that's one thing I think as Christians as well is I think we should pray for our leaders. They have impossible jobs.
That's so
like
true.
whether it's Trudeau or Trump, they have thankless,
100%. Yeah.
impossible jobs.
It's true.
And
Like, put me into that office tomorrow, right? And there would be plenty of people that would love me and plenty of people that would hate
yeah,
me.
Absolutely.
100%.
I mean, we have such a small, we've got a few thousand people that call King's Church home. And even as that's grown, I've seen the complexity of meeting the needs of,
huge.
congregation person 17
Yep.
and congregation person 1833.
Yep.
Like, they all have different needs, and to standardize, governance that meets them where they're at, it is complicated. It is
Yep.
not as simple as one size fits all. And I think as Christians, we need to be ones who extend grace and understanding and prayer and support. Yeah, speak truth. We don't have to say we like how they're doing things.
Yep.
We don't have to say they're great people even.
Right.
But we should not be the people that just rip them apart all the time and
right.
tear down. Like, you should pray for them, man. So
Yeah.
clean your room.
That's a
You
good-
worry,
that's
you
a
worry
good-
about
Clean your room.
you worry about your
a good word.
kingdom too, right?
That's right.
So,
Right.
That's
Cool.
a good word.
I
That's a
like
good
that
word.
a lot.
Yeah.
And our little
Absolutely.
corners of the kingdom, our little pieces of the world that we're called to be in, like we're called to clean those up as we go, right?
Yeah,
like, I think
absolutely.
the areas around us as followers of Jesus, should be improved because we're there.
That's right.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
we're living the way that Jesus, that's why he's calling us to live that way.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I
It's
think,
it brings hope into the world, in places where they're not going to find it anywhere else.
Right.
Yeah, and I think too, like you tend the garden of your life, you know, and I think as you steward your life, God begins to open more opportunities of influence for you to speak into other things. I think there's, you know, like there's something to be said about the person who, you know, you're an internet troll and you're just ripping all the time. You know, if you're a Christian internet troll, you need to actually ask yourself the question, like, okay, if God's not actually giving me an opportunity to speak into these things, then I should probably just
stop.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Just
like,
stop it.
and start like working on myself and my little kingdom.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
and then we'll see if God opens doors,
Yeah.
you know, for me to have more influence.
That's an
Absolutely.
interesting conversation right there. Is like the people that get those platforms to speak, are they the ones who are actively seeking it and wanting it, right? Like if you feel like you have to work for your platform to get it, you're probably not supposed to have it.
I think there are career politicians,
Yeah.
you know, and I think it would be hard to be a Christian career politician. I think there are some who've done it well,
Yep.
but it would be very difficult.
Very
Yeah.
tricky.
I think as a believer though, I'm in connection with a friend who, he's in the White House as a pastor. He's a pastor. He's a famous pastor, and you know, like he would be the first to say, "Look, I didn't go looking for this. God opened a door,
That's right.
Right.
and I felt responsible to walk through it."
Yes.
That was like I don't know if you saw.
But he wasn't begging for an invitation.
Not at all, you know. But
Exactly.
I think as believers, we are obligated to, if the Lord opens a door for us to speak into,
That's right.
we
That's
speak.
it.
We speak it in.
Yep.
I saw not too long ago. I know we need to move on, but I could geek out on this stuff.
Yeah.
I saw not too long ago. There's a pastor in South Carolina, John Gray.
Oh, I saw that.
Remember him? He had a reality show.
Yes.
Fantastic preacher.
Very
I
good.
follow him on Instagram.
No, he's a great
there.
preacher.
He had a reality show anyway.
Killer
He
preacher.
just took over as a pastor in South Carolina.
Yep.
He got invited to go to the White House
Yep.
and sit with Donald Trump and speak into stuff on prison reform.
Yeah.
And the black community like ripped him a new
Yeah,
one.
he did.
Like,
Yeah, they did.
how dare you go and sit with that man? How
Yeah.
dare you go and do that? And he took it.
He did.
And this is a black pastor. Like this is not like, you know, his own kind of family. Like a lot of his people were really turned on him. That was pretty crazy to watch. And he just spoke back and said, "Look, I believe that if God opens a door for me to speak truth, like why on earth would I stand out here and
wouldn't I?
protest? Why would I not go and take every opportunity, even if I disagree with him?" Right. And so I think that as believers, that's the
If you could be an agent of change or an agent for good, or you could shine some light, like if you have the president's ear for a second, and you're going to come in there with a Christ-like biblical worldview, like why
plant seed.
we'd be foolish not to.
And like I remember that story. Actually, John Gray went on Insta story, and actually went online and actually kind of gave a rebuttal to everything that was going on. But it's crazy. It's costly, to have that seat next to the president. He show a video of him, and he's actually sitting. He's the one right next to President Trump. Puts his hand on him and prays for him.
Right.
And I got thinking about myself. Like, if I was asked to do that, would I go?
Yeah.
I said absolutely I would.
way easier
Have the
not to.
opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So, but man, it's. You know, we get in the culture wars, and one of the things we talked about is it is costly.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we have to embrace that too as Christians. And
there's that passage I read it in the sermon. I think I quoted it in the last pod too. Was 1 Peter 2, where it says, you know, live such lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of wrongdoing, so on the one hand it'll cost you.
It's going to cost you.
They'll give glory. They'll see your good deeds and they'll give glory to their Father in heaven when He returns.
True.
It's like, you know what? Sometimes God will open a door and He wants you to shine the light and be the hero and speak. Other times, like
He just wants you to live it out.
You're just going to live it out, and it's going to cost you something.
Yeah.
And it's just not going to fit. All that to say.
Again, too, like we know the negative side of that interaction with John Gray, but there probably was positive too that came from it.
Yeah,
as well.
I'm sure.
Right. So.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And we may never know this, like in this life,
That's
like
true.
what good actually came of that conversation and what was accomplished there in that moment. So
we talked about the culture wars, and this rolls into the conversation, Seth, that you kind of led our church through, and that is the conversation around justice, because one of the main threads of the culture wars right now, and I felt like it really needed its own week anyways, just social justice. You have SJWs, right? Social justice warriors,
Yep.
and everyone's got their own
own
thing
cause.
that they're
Yeah.
rallying for. You got
Yep.
the vegans and the femin Nazis, I think
Yep.
they're called now. Like they're
Probably.
like, there are some wild,
It's crazy out there.
wild initiatives out there. You know,
Right.
like and people are passionate about it. Like
They
that,
are.
they are
People like a
super-
cause.
They do.
They
Right.
do like a cause,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think so. Justice is something to talk about.
Yeah.
And people are hardcore about their thing.
Yes.
You know, I had a 40-minute conversation with a lady at our church about veganism, or, you know, being a vegetarian, and that I should be, because I'm a Christian, I should be a vegetarian. We could talk about that.
Yeah. There you go.
Because Pastor Don decided to cook a steak on the stage, and so
Oh, I saw
that.
yeah, that didn't play well.
I can see how that wouldn't go well
for
someone who
this
is
lady. So
Yeah.
ended up having a bit of a discussion about that. I
that's
definitely don't agree that to be a Christian you need to be a vegetarian.
Right.
I think it's.
I have plenty of friends who are.
Oh yeah.
And
I
that's
think
like,
you can be a vegetarian. I don't think you can say the Bible says that you should be a vegetarian.
Yes.
That's right.
I mean, what do you do with it? Is it Acts 11 where Peter has the dream and
He does.
the
They
animals
drop
come
the
down?
sheet.
And this is
All these
actually in red
piggies.
letters, like Jesus
literal
himself
pigs
said,
in a blanket.
told
It's in
him
the
to do it.
Bible.
Jesus himself literally.
I love pigs in a blanket.
Acts 2:11, pigs in a blanket.
Jesus literally said, "Rise, kill, and eat."
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like, that's problematic. It's problematic too.
It
Like,
was. Yeah.
how like one of the major miracles, Jesus took a few fish and like ripped them apart and fed 15,000 people meat.
Yeah.
Anyway, all that to say, people are really into their cause.
They are.
Yeah.
They are.
You
And
know,
I think
so-
like what we talked about, you know, was that, you know, every like justice is a big issue for everybody, right? But we're still divided in terms of justice. I
Right.
find it's
Yeah.
interesting. Like, you know, I
Well,
think
like you were saying right there, right? Someone
Right,
takes
yeah.
their cause and then takes it beyond a personal choice.
And that's all you can see.
Yeah.
That's right.
Like you're just everything's through that filter.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone has a side, right, of
Mm.
justice. But I think the big thing is, and I think we're finding this with all these topics, and that's that we just can't agree on what justice actually is, right? And so, you know, we all kind of have our own sense of justice. We all, you know, I think it plays into the culture of the day. Like we're talking about trending, and you know, we live in a world that's very self-interested, and so I have a very self-understanding of what justice is,
Right.
and so and then, you know, multiply that by 7 billion people on planet Earth, and so we have a lot of very passionate people who link arms with other passionate people, and you have these subgroups and these
Right.
justice groups everywhere, right? And so
People are building their justice, their sense of justice based on their own understanding and experience
Yes.
and feelings and
yeah.
yeah.
Which is why today we, as Christians, especially as the church, we need a very clear framework as to what justice means from a kingdom perspective. And
Yeah.
the truth is, as Christians, we ought to be involved in justice. Like that's a very important thing. I mean, one of the things we talked about was in Micah chapter 6, verse 8, the minor prophet. Sometimes the minor prophets say the biggest
some
things.
good stuff in there.
And he said we ought to do justice and to love mercy, right? And one of the things we discussed was that justice is an action. Like we ought to be, the word that is used there means to judge the wrongdoing, but also to give people their rights. And so it's a big loaded word, but the attitude is mercy, right?
So let's back up. So
Yeah.
framing in justice, like as a believer, and again, you preached on this and have done more research, but it, just in my gut reaction on the content and conversation, like you have to develop an understanding of justice, like as a believer, it ultimately has to center back around like the cross.
Absolutely.
On God's standard of what is right
Absolutely.
and wrong.
Yes.
And first and foremost, our understanding of justice is built on this sense of, well, my understanding of justice is flawed in the first place.
That's
and
correct.
It's built around me.
That's
and
right.
my understanding and my selfishness and my brokenness, and I'm trying to prop up my brokenness. And so like the cross, the gospel itself, I think has to first and foremost
Absolutely.
basically implicate all of us.
That's right.
And say
Yeah.
all of us actually deserve wrath,
That's right.
right? And we
Yeah,
actually
you said that in your message, like the Culture Wars message. You said that, like the cross implicates every one of us.
Absolutely.
And that was,
yeah.
I loved that. Yeah.
And like so the cross actually implicates all of us, which knocks us off of our high horse too, right?
does,
Like
right.
I think we just approach justice out the gate as believers. We're supposed to approach it differently than we would if we weren't building our whole understanding on the fact that, we believe we're the people who receive what we did not deserve.
Yeah, that's right.
We deserved wrath, and we were given grace and mercy.
That's right.
And we saw the highest standard of righteousness in Jesus, right?
That's right.
He is the standard of what's right.
That's right.
And what's wrong. And he showed us that, and he chose to wash feet, and he chose to serve, and he chose to be with the lowly. So the whole thing has to be built. I don't think you can do justice right.
No.
Outside of the gospel.
No, not at all. In fact, it's interesting reading a little bit. Tim Keller, if anyone wants to look into some of his material, he wrote a book called Generous Justice, which is incredible. One of the things he talks about in that book is that we'll never understand a biblical sense of justice until we understand what it means to be justified at the cross.
Right. That's
justice is actually the response of justification on the cross.
Just for our listeners, what's justification? That's kind of what I was getting at. But
yeah, I mean, justification is we receive what Jesus took on what we deserved, but justification is that we receive what Jesus, who he is,
yeah.
right? I mean, so. Who Jesus is, we walk in that. We receive that.
There's a bunch of fancy words in the
some good theological terms there.
Propitiation. The word is propitiation, and what that means is, the cross. We actually literally believe, when you put your faith in Jesus, is He's swapped your unrighteousness, and your unworthiness.
That's right.
For His righteousness. So that's what it means to be justified.
Yes.
The Southern preachers.
What an amazing gift.
The Southern preachers, just as if I'd never sinned, right? It's just as if I'd never sinned, right? I have a perfect track record.
That's right.
So I'm coming into the justice conversation.
Yes.
I love that. Tim Keller's so much smarter than me. But
he is incredibly smart.
So what was that quote again? So justice comes from an understanding.
He said justice is the byproduct of justification.
Right.
Right. And so we will never actually understand a framework for justice biblically until we walk through the cross,
right?
Basically, is what he's saying.
Truly, to walk in it, to be a person who brings justice.
Yeah,
it's from the overflow of having been justified yourself.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right? Because I think here's my big criticism on watching a lot of the social justice wars play out is actually, how do I say this? I've seen this in church. Sometimes people will give to charity, for instance. They'll give to the poor. And I would say, and again, this is a hard issue, and I can't give you an example of someone that's done this, but just go with me for a second. It's possible to give to the poor, but actually be giving to yourself.
Absolutely.
Oh, totally.
You're actually giving money, but what you're really doing is depositing something in yourself to make you feel better.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's actually not Christian justice, because Christian justice gives out of the overflow of what I already have.
That's right.
I've been given so much, and I have so much love in me. I have so much care in me. I have so much capacity or resource. All those things. It's out of the overflow.
That's right.
And I think the flawed version of that you see in the world, if you pop the hood and you see what's really going on, that's why people I think get so aggressive and militant. It's actually not as much connected to how much you think you care about this particular cause or those particular people. It's more answering a question inside of you, and this is the way that you're trying to answer it.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of
sense.
sense.
That's such a huge thing. I think for us as believers to look through and look differently at, looking out for the poor, racial injustice, gender injustice, the unborn, all those things. We look at those from a Christian perspective. That's not, us being the solution is not in some weird roundabout way answering a question inside of us that needs to be answered.
That's right.
Right.
That's already answered, and because of that,
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a really good point that there's that temptation, I think, to be charitable, to feel good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And what's our motivation in that?
Well, and it's actually interesting. Keller gets into that a little bit. He says that oftentimes what happens is we do justice through a lens of duty rather than through a lens of beauty.
Yeah.
Right.
Guy, come on.
And so what he's
Stop
so
it,
good.
Tim Keller.
It's not a guilt trip, right?
No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just
Did
kidding.
he rip you off?
Yeah, he ripped me off on that one. But anyways,
please don't sue us, Tim
And
Keller.
the beauty for Christians is the cross. Right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty, that we see it through a lens, right?
So
yeah.
even on that, like, because I was just about to say, and obviously again, Tim Keller said it way more eloquently than I ever could.
Same.
But
Please be on our podcast.
yeah, check
Yes.
out Tim Keller, y'all. Like
He's listening,
church
so-
people,
He's
like
listening.
that guy. If you want something that's gonna like
Yeah.
just melt your mind
Yes.
and massage your heart, he's
Yes.
the guy.
That's right.
But like again, so not only I think can we wrongfully seek justice to make ourselves feel better, I think we can also wrongfully do it to make ourselves feel like we matter.
That's right.
Like we can get like it's that search for meaning.
Yes.
It's that search to like I think you said it earlier, Andy. Like people need a fight. I
Yeah.
believe we
Right.
do. I actually believe as someone created in the image of God. You go back to Genesis chapter 2, Genesis chapter 1, where God makes man in his image, and he says, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. We were actually made to wrestle things
Absolutely.
down
Yeah.
and cultivate and control. Like that's part of the God image in us. And
That's
I think
our-
you see that play itself out with, the women's marches
Yeah.
and all these things. Like there's a reason that's collecting momentum. It's because inside of every human being, you have a longing to fight for something.
Yeah.
That's in you.
Yeah.
And I think again, the faulty version of that though is, I'm doing this
Yeah.
because I really need to just be part of something bigger than me.
That's right.
I got to find a cause.
Yeah.
Right.
And so as a believer though, we aren't doing it to find a cause. We're actually doing it from a cause.
That's exactly right.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's like the other side that you're talking about is a distortion, right? Like our
Right.
response to and our desire and hunger for justice is a reflection of the image of God that's been placed in each one of us.
Yes.
But it's a distortion of it when it comes out the other way, right? That we've taken it and like we sort of twisted those desires, those inclinations that God has placed in us, and now we're sort of doing it at the end of the day to somehow massage our own ego or to assuage our guilt or whatever that is, right?
And I don't think people like
Not consciously.
Yeah,
no.
that's the thing. I don't think the
Yeah.
average person's like,
No.
well, really, we need to. I think that's something
Totally.
buried way deep into
Yeah.
into someone's soul. And I
Absolutely.
think people
But it's a
have
good thing to look at.
in their minds and hearts the most pure motives. I think what the cross tells us though is you can't trust your motives.
That's right.
You can't
Yeah.
trust your ideology. You can't trust the way you see it and your
Yeah.
perspective.
That's right.
And so you reset and recenter yourself on the cross, and you engage justice from there.
That's exactly
You know?
right.
Yeah.
So that's so
Well, even
huge.
just reading that verse that you were saying, Micah 6:8, like
Yeah.
it says there's a huge component of that. It says, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and then
correct.
to walk humbly,
Walk humbly
with your God."
Yes,
right.
absolutely.
So it's. I love that thinking of justice as like, what is justice? Is justice the undoing of wrongs? In
Yeah.
people's lives, but it comes from a place of, man, because that's been done for me, I can't help but do that for somebody else. Not because I'm guilted into it, or not because I want to accomplish something like for myself, or
Right.
like I can't help but do it because of what my justification and what God has done for me in my life has been such a powerful motivator that I can't help but extend that to somebody else.
That's right. That's
So we kind of have the gospel as the foundation, the framework, all of that. But like as Christians, Seth, to kind of recap even what you're brought,
Yeah.
how are we to understand justice? Like if we were to break it apart.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a Christian perspective, like some of the practical things that we can get into a little bit, and what we talked about is that how we view the world around us, and from this lens of justice, from this lens of grace, really three things I think that we can just remind ourselves of. Number one, that we're to treat people equally.
Right.
Like that's an important component of
equality.
Equality, right,
So-
is huge.
And that's a huge
Absolutely.
conversation right now of what equality looks like.
Absolutely.
Right.
So
Yeah.
let me kick this on you.
Yeah.
We know it's a good idea.
Right.
Yeah, like
But how does it actually
even back to what we were just saying
flesh
about
out?
like how without the gospel as the framework and foundation,
It gets distorted.
everything gets tweaked and
true.
and cracked and
Yeah.
distorted. And so
Yeah.
how does equality, how does the gospel inform us for understanding equality?
Yeah.
Let's go there. Like, because we haven't really talked, with the culture wars, we
Yeah.
kind of skirted around the conversation with the justice. Same thing. This comes up. So how does the gospel inform our understanding of what equality looks like?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question. In my perspective, like I think the gospel disarms lines that are drawn. Like, I think there's an equal footing,
like hierarchy.
Yeah,
even?
hierarchy. I think racial, social lines are erased by the gospel. I mean, we live in such a tribal society, and so, when God is speaking to his people, even in the Old Testament, this isn't just New Testament content.
Right.
Like, we can't forget that God was weaving, this understanding, this framework, actually the gospel framework of justice in the Old Testament. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But one of the things he told his people was, you're to treat the foreigner the exact same way you treat the national person.
Which in Old Testament days, when God would have relayed that message, would have been so unbelievably revolutionary.
Right.
Like the idea that you treat somebody from the outside the same way you treat them as your family.
Talk about immigrants and immigration, right? We
Absolutely.
feel like that's a hot button topic right now. Back then, it was a whole other world.
Well, and they lived in a world like, do we kill this person for showing up? Right? Like, and
They're
then
dead.
here comes God and the Israelites saying, no, we're going to actually treat the foreigner.
Yeah.
Like we're going to value
they're one of us.
hospitality, and we're going to pay the price for them.
And God goes, right to the core with this. It's not, treat your fellow American equal. The term that God uses, you can see this in Genesis 9, the earliest accounts where God is actually telling this to his people, that you are to treat people who are of human flesh. Right. So it's not a nation. It's
not a gender.
No, it's not a gender.
Not a skin color.
Nope. It's just human flesh.
Yeah.
Right.
And all humans.
Right. And justice is such a deep topic in the Bible, and really in the heart of God. Like, this is we talk about the nature of God a lot here at King's Church. Well, justice is found right in the very heart of God himself. Like, to not do justice is really rebellion against God. Like, that's how
huge it is.
That's how huge this topic is.
Yeah.
And
it's not like a nice add-on.
No, it's not a nice add-on. No.
It's like a biblical mandate.
Right. I mean, in fact,
Jesus.
Isaiah is coming against the people of God, and he's saying to the people, a message from the Lord, saying to them, hey, I'm going to tell you your rebellion. Yeah. And he says, you guys are seeking me. That's a good thing. Yeah. We want a church full of people seeking God. That's great. You know, you guys you're going after God to get his voice on things. Fantastic.
Good job.
That's great. But they're oppressing people, and he says, like, that's a major no. You think you're in right relationship right now, but the fact that you are oppressing people and using your slaves in a bad way, you're actually defying me at this moment, right? So
God actually commanded Israel not to have slaves.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? Like, he liberated them, and then you actually see, once they start circling the drain in, like, you see Judges, you actually see them now having human property.
Yes.
And, like, this kind of cycle repeating. But, to actually be
it was
a
never an
God-fearing...
indicator that things are going well when those things were happening in the Bible.
You can't take the gospel seriously or the Bible seriously and come out with any other conclusion that God made human beings equally.
That's right.
We're all born naked, and you can't take anything with you when you die.
Yes.
And so I don't think I know, like, I'll stake my life on it. Like, you can't be Christian and racist.
That's right. No, absolutely.
You absolutely can't. Like, and I don't get how, like, even white supremacists can kind of pull Christian, somehow, like, they've connected that to their faith. That is not like from Genesis 1 to Revelation 21. It's like God has created all people equal. Yeah. Right. So that has implications on race, tribe, skin color, all that stuff.
That's
like,
right.
We view every human being as infinitely valuable. That's right. Created in the image of God. Yeah. That also has implications on the unborn.
That's absolutely
as well, right? Yeah. So abortion's a huge topic. We believe that every human being is infinitely valuable.
That's right.
And so I think this conversation around abortion, and I know you hit some of that, like, that's a huge topic in our culture. And I think I don't see how, as a believer, as a God-fearing person, as a person who thinks the Bible is authoritative. That's right. I don't think you can look at that and justify abortion. Like, I don't.
No, in fact, with that topic, as we dive into this topic of justice, and this is a massive topic. I mean, we could probably preach a whole series on justice.
All of these different topics in this whole series could probably be an entire series on their own.
But the Bible actually talks about the fact, if we talk about the fatherless, would be even those who are in the category of the unborn, that we're actually as Christians supposed to show even special concern for that. So it goes beyond just equal treatment. We're actually to go above and beyond,
right?
You know, and really the 4 categories that the Bible gives us are the widows, which is a fascinating thing, and we'll you know, another time, another place, we'll talk about that. But the fatherless, the oppressed, and the poor. And so and this isn't us being charitable. This is us being advocates,
right,
for, you know, for life and for children. And I think the church has done a really good job at that. You know, even today we have some of our own friends adopting children, right? And I'm a product of that. Like, I was adopted as a child as well. And of course, you guys heard my brother's story as I shared that, you know, and so we, you know, this isn't just a tag on thing that we're called to do, but we have to show special concern to the unborn even. So
for sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the arguments around abortion, you know, in the mainstream is, you know, what constitutes murder, what constitutes, you know, when is it a life?
Right.
I think is the argument that is often.
When does life begin?
When does life begin?
Yeah.
And as a believer, like, you know, I don't know how you could not think that it begins at conception, because, you know, we actually don't believe as Christians that we are the author of life. Yes, okay, a man and a woman, a sperm and an egg came together and you were a part of that. However, like, I mean, you stay in a Christian community long enough, you realize it's more than just 2 people having sex that makes a baby. Like, there's some other thing at play there that God, you know, that either happens or it doesn't.
That's right.
You know, and like, you're not in control of that. Like, you really have very little to do with it. You know, and I think it's such a miracle. Conception is such a we believe that is a miracle.
That's right.
And it's something God did, and the idea that we can snuff that out is I think it grieves the heart of God for sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, it comes down to us trying to, like, that's how I look at it. If I'm asking myself that question, and totally honestly, like, at what point does life actually begin? As a human being, I can almost understand, right, how someone would say, well, it's just cells and it's not, you know, it's too infantile to even really matter or make a difference, right? So I can sympathize with that outlook. Now, that being said, like, again, if I'm looking at this from a biblical standpoint, it's like God set this up. It is a miracle. Life is a miracle. Yeah. Like, this is how God ordained it to work. Yeah. Anything outside of that is me trying to control something that is not mine to control.
Correct.
That's correct.
Right?
Yeah,
so I'm putting a stop to or an end to what God has already ordained or created and put into motion.
That's right.
Right? And so... And that's where I can stand out and say, well, that's not, like, that is life. Like, this is the miracle that God has created. So if I'm snuffing that out intentionally, that's not okay.
No. It's I don't think there's any way around it. I know I've been in some conversations and dialogues where people will cook up the most wild, well, what if this happened? What if someone was raped and, you know, the mom was going to die if she gave birth and all those kinds of things. Like,
because there are some medical conditions where, like, you can be a perfectly healthy woman and you want the baby, but the doctor says you need to terminate this pregnancy because it's going to kill you if you don't.
That's right.
Yeah. I honestly, I don't.
Crazy decision.
Again, I don't know any other way other than resigning my life to the fact that God is in control of my life.
That's right.
And God is in control. Even if I stepped out, or even if I had an unwanted pregnancy that was, you know, having sex out of marriage, and, you know, even if, like, I'm dealing with the repercussions of my own mistakes, or even if I was, you know, as a product of an act of injustice where, God forbid, someone was raped.
That's right.
I still, as a believer, I think I have to humble myself before the Lord and say, okay, here we are. You know, we talked about it in the last podcast, like, the Lord is my shepherd.
That's right.
And I shall not want. And even that even means if I have an unwanted pregnancy. That even means if I have health concerns, that this could cost me my life. Like, I think we follow someone who gave up his life in trust to the Father.
Absolutely.
And His grace reaches us and meets us where we're at. 100% of the time.
Yeah, and again, I mean, you might be able to. I don't know how you would, but you might be able to cook up some way to, you know, put staging around that and figure out one scenario that can justify an abortion. But I can't get there personally.
Yeah.
I just think at the end of the day, in the beginning of the day, God is in control of life. I think where I'd push back on the church would be, it's easy for, 3 dudes to sit around. Like, we don't have a woman here right now.
That's right.
3 dudes to sit around here and say, suck it up. Too bad. You can't do that.
Yeah.
I think where I'd push back, or where the church has failed, has been, we haven't been Christ-like. We've been Christ-like in the sense of the cross says, the cross speaks truth.
Yeah.
And it just does.
Right.
And it's not wavering. It's implicating you. It's saying you're wrong. It's saying you've failed. It's saying God is God and you're not, and humble yourself. I think the cross does that. I think the church has done that on the abortion conversation. Like, hey, wait a minute. God is God.
That's right.
What the church has failed, though, to do, that Jesus did, was embrace the cost of having to walk out what it means to honor God.
Yeah.
And I think there's been maybe too many situations like this where 3 Christian dudes crack open the Bible and say, well, this is what we believe about justice to the unborn. And
too bad, so sad.
So to the single mom who's right now, 16 years old in the city of Halifax, that has no idea what she's going to do, has no idea how she's going to afford this pregnancy, figure it out.
Feels like her life is ruined.
I think that's where we've maybe lost our voice, and we haven't been Christ-like.
That's right.
I think the church still needs to step even deeper into, foster care. I know my brother-in-law and sister have jumped into that big time.
Yeah.
Adoption.
Yep.
We need to be the ones that are doing that, and have been. I don't want to be the first one to jump back into the negative news cycle to say, well, Christians never do that. No, we've been leading the way in that for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think that needs to be the start of the conversation too. Hey, I think it was Mother Teresa, wasn't it, who said, like, why are they aborting so many babies in America? Give me your babies. Like, I'll take them. Right. Like that. Like, that's what I think Christians need to do at the end of the day. Is like, okay, if we can't find anything else, like, we'll take them.
We accept the responsibility of coming alongside someone, and that goes back to what you were saying too. Like the categories of people that we're called to love are like widows, fatherless, the oppressed, and poor. Like, it's not saying, you made your bed, now lie in it. It's coming alongside and saying,
we'll get in here with you.
You need money. Like, we're getting down in the mess and saying, like, this life matters. But we're going to help you make this work.
We're going to help. Yeah.
And that requires sacrifice on our part, right? And that's where it comes, like, backing up, like, actually, like, talking the talk and then walking the walk behind it and saying, no, like, we believe in this enough and believe in you enough, and like that God's grace is extended enough to you into this baby that we'll do whatever it takes to make this work.
Yeah.
And I think it's I'd like to applaud those people who give their life to this work, because there's people that do this, and they work at pregnancy resource centers. I know we have folks in our location in Halifax that they're involved heavily in this stuff, and it's deeply complex. It is so hard and difficult, and you empathize with some of the stories that you hear. It's messy, right?
I think one thing that we also need to be peddlers of, though, is this, that like every child is a blessing.
That's right.
Every child is a blessing.
Yes.
Like to not allow that narrative to, like, this whole unwanted.
That's right.
Like, maybe we need to begin with changing that label of unwanted pregnancies, and like creating we actually are the ones that believe, like, blessed is the man whose quiver is full of arrows,
full of children. That's right.
We actually believe kids are a blessing.
That's right.
And even the ones that came when you didn't expect it.
That's right.
Like, that's what made my wife and I decide to have a third, because we were like, we had this perfect family, we got a beautiful little girl, little boy, and let's not mess this up. The world's made for 4, families of 4.
That's where I'm at right now.
Screw everything up after that. And we went back and forth, and I was just convicted of this. Like, do I actually? Again, we're not having any more. I'm off the grid now. But I'm just saying, like, it was one of those conversations
never
where, like,
never.
We're open to adopting, or who knows what happens someday. How God wants to expand our family. But for now, like, we're 3 and 2 cats.
Yeah, that's right.
And a dog sometime. But it was like that. Like, do I actually believe when God says children are a blessing?
That's right.
Do I trust him on that?
Yeah.
And I just had that dialogue with God, and he's like, there's no way in 5 years, if you have a third child, you're going to regret it.
Yeah.
And that's what won me over in the end. So, like, maybe we're the ones that start waving that flag of speaking life into these moms who are freaking out, but saying, I don't know how it's all going to work. We're going to walk this out with you. Yeah. But this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to you.
Absolutely.
Right. And you're going to be thankful for this. You won't, 20 years from now, when you're going through graduation with this little guy, like, you'll be like, oh my goodness, I can't even believe that
Yeah.
What a blessing. So
Yeah.
I think that's a huge
And I
thing
think that's
for
what God
us.
specializes in, is meeting us in our messes where we're at. And it's
right.
not to say, like you were saying, this wasn't my plan for my life. And maybe it wasn't the most ideal scenario, but it doesn't mean that God can't show up and use it to do something absolutely amazing and beautiful in your life. And we've all heard like way too many stories around that, and like your brother's story and your story, right?
Yeah.
To not know that that's absolutely true. So
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be done in a minute. We still got some stuff that we didn't get to. Man, there's so much you can talk about.
There's a lot here.
I hope this has been helpful for some people
Yeah.
as they're listening or watching. But so we're talking about equality. We're talking about justice. What does justice to the poor look like? Because I think that's a nuanced conversation too. Like the same way that how do I frame this? Like, is justice simply, throwing a toonie in a guy's empty coffee cup as you walk by? Is that justice? What does it look like to love mercy, walk humbly, and how do we as believers engage the poor?
Yeah, I think it really goes to a heart condition too for us. Like, this is where we kind of get into one of our values as a church, that we're radically generous people, right? So generosity is a huge piece to biblical justice, that we share our assets with people. And I think it's more than just money. I think it's like spending yourself, like getting involved, right?
It's easy to write a check sometimes.
Oh, it is. It really is.
For a lot of
right?
people, that's way easier.
Yeah, and I think, like harping back on this past week's Love Week, I think the thing that was so big was people getting involved, getting their hands dirty, right? Like going to these places, knowing people by name, and like sitting down with people. I did that. I was involved, right? And, and I think the whole concept just not being stingy, right? In many ways, and I had this thought actually on the drive here about this particular portion or part. Like, I'm thinking about my own kids, and I think to myself, like, I wouldn't be stingy with my own kids, but what if someone was in need? Like, would I give them hand-me-downs, or would I be would I be willing to go buy new clothes and give them to a person in need, right? And I kind of felt checked in that, my own heart, So I think when it comes, from the position of the poor, we're supposed to be advocates and to raise people up out of that, right? I think we
have I think sometimes we have a faulty understanding of what poverty is, though.
That's true.
And we think that poverty is just like environmental or economic, right? Yeah. It is
what you possess.
Yeah.
But it's also relational.
Yep.
It's also spiritual.
Yep.
It's intellectual.
Yep.
Is a huge thing. Like, a lot of the time, in my experiences, I've kind of grown in this, and I've been around the church for a while, and I've been to some third world contexts, and I've seen it. Like, a lot of the problem with poverty isn't just simply a lack of resource. It's actually a lack of education and knowing how to handle resource.
Yep.
And so as believers, I think we need to be mature in how we understand, like, are we actually helping or are we hurting?
That's true.
Yeah. There's that book, I read it years ago, When Helping Hurts.
Yeah.
It just talks about how Christians actually have made things a lot worse sometimes by just writing checks, and all you're doing is funding dysfunction.
That's true. Yeah.
So there's that extreme on just blindly kicking money to people who have more complex problems than just the fact they don't have money.
That's right.
It's maybe they don't have the actual understanding to have money or hold a job. Those kinds of things. That's one of the things I love about the guys in St. John, the Outflow guys. Is like, they're trying to restore dignity.
Yes.
They're trying to actually give people opportunity.
Yes. Yeah.
And that to me is a more Christian understanding of poverty. It's not just giving someone a meal.
Yeah.
I think the hard part, and I don't know if you guys ever felt this, I have felt at different seasons in my life, and sometimes maybe it might be God-led, sometimes it might just be my own callousness, but it's easy to float from one extreme to the other, in that it's easy to maybe grow callous in a way that just says, well, you don't need my money. What you need is a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's like half true.
It is half true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
it's your problem, not my problem.
Yeah, or even, well, if I give you this $20 or I buy you a new pair of shoes so your feet aren't cold this winter, like, is that really going to help you? Or what is it? What you really need is to get a job and get on your feet. I think that that's a dysfunctional attitude, you know, and I think it can creep in when you have that kind of awareness. I've noticed that myself before, like I've learned that poverty is more complicated and nuanced than we make it to be.
Right.
And there's a tendency though in that to lose your heart. When you grab the head of it, it's easy to kind of lose the heart for it.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you know, I think what Jesus demonstrated though is he understood poverty and he paid the price for it too. Like he went all the way in, both with actually loving us in our poverty and depravity, and fully understanding that we are our own worst enemy.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the hard part for a lot of people though, is like navigating the fact that, you know, poverty is something that's in our minds. It's something that is in our environment. And those are two different things that I think you can get disproportionately focused on. I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
I think it does
it's
make
not
sense.
as simple as just throwing money at something.
Yeah.
That's right.
I think it's a waste of money, and all it's gonna do is empower dysfunction.
Yeah.
It's also not appropriate though to just pull back and say, well, until we create some systems and educate them, I'm not going to give them money and help them with their meals.
Right. Doing nothing isn't an option.
No.
Right.
I
Again,
think,
for the biblical mandate, like seeing it the way you're saying it as a mindset rather than a problem that can just be fixed by cash. It doesn't mean that we don't have to do something about it, right? Like sometimes we will. I think it comes down to more like sensitivity to the Spirit's leading in our lives, and to know like, okay, this person's asking me for $20 right now, or this person needs $50. This person needs $500.
Yeah.
And it's like, am I supposed to do like this? Is that what the Spirit wants for me in this moment? Is to say yes to that,
right?
And then to trust that if I feel like that's the case, then 100%.
Yeah.
Maybe He wants me to go further. Maybe He wants me to give more. Maybe He wants me to come alongside this guy and help him to build a resume and to get a job, or like whatever that like could be a ton of different things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because I think it's not one or the other. It's both and in a sense.
Exactly.
Right?
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, you know, because I mean, there's that whole like you don't want to feed like entitlement, right? In a sense, right? Because I remember I've dealt with people like this who you have the same people who come looking for more money, you know, needing money, and I struggle with that because I always felt like I need to support the poor, I need to do that, but at the same time I realized that nothing was getting, like, they weren't getting better, they weren't coming out of that.
Right.
I mean, you might begin there, but our goal is not to see them stay there.
Yeah.
It's to bring them out of that, right? And so
we don't want to empower dysfunction.
That's
and
right.
Jesus never did that. Like, you look at the guy, and we'll be done in a second, but you look at the guy, the paralytic by the pool of Bethsaida, right? Like, it's like 40 years or something like that.
Yeah.
30 years he'd been laying beside the pool and wanting to get his healing, and he never got it. And Jesus asked him a question that I think, at face value, it seems shocking, but then when you actually think about what he means by that, it's bang on. He said, "Do you want to be well?
Yeah.
Or would you prefer to stay here on your mat?"
Yeah.
Right? Like, he didn't, coddle that at all. He said, like, if you want healing, I'm the way. I can help you. I can change your life.
But tell me what you
but
want.
it's going to take. You need to want it, and then he said, "Pick up your mat and walk."
That's right.
Jesus didn't pick him up.
Yeah.
He pointed him, like, he empowered him to go do it himself.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, again, Jesus was the means of the miracle.
That's right.
But that guy had to actuate his faith.
It's true.
I think there's a dance there that we need to be willing to get into. But
It's totally true. Yeah.
guys, we didn't even get to gun violence.
Oh man.
Darn it.
We didn't.
As
know.
a member of the NRA.
You too?
Yeah.
A card holding
My card,
member.
where's my card?
You got your card.
No,
What's the Canadian equivalent of the NRA? I don't even know.
Is there?
I don't think so.
Is there one?
I think there's a BB gun group somewhere.
Probably.
Ptink.
You have a partridge license. That's what you
Partridge
get.
license.
Yeah. I think all the guys in Canada, they just have guns hidden somewhere. They're all unregistered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that does that.
Well, everybody, hey, if you made it to the end of our second episode, we hit some pretty cool stuff in
people
this.
did.
It wasn't
Some big stuff.
It
Yeah.
wasn't
Those are some
as,
important conversations, yeah.
Sexual.
It was
the other
definitely a
one.
lot easier for us to talk about this stuff than it was for the last one, I feel like.
It was, yeah.
Much less uncomfortable for me personally.
I'm glad David was here last time, not me. So
Yeah.
I feel
my
like
Tom
engine
Brady.
blew up. Yeah, of course.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh man,
Sorry.
there we go.
Whoops.
sorry.
Full.
We'll wrap things up with another raucous applause. Hey, next podcast, I got some special guests coming up. We've got Mike Miller from Nova Church.
Oh, Mike Miller.
Show up.
Yes,
Oh, the
Mike
good guy.
Miller.
Yeah.
Awesome. No church from Hollywood.
Halifax.
And
yeah.
AJ
Halifax,
Thomas from Deepwater. In
Oh,
Halifax
also
as well.
Halifax.
Halifax native.
Woo!
So
Yeah, it's good.
Native,
assuming
maybe
they're
not.
going to get here and their engines aren't going to blow, we hope to have them on the pod soon.
true.
We're having fun with this. I think
Yeah.
we might need to figure
awesome.
out ways to do this more often. It's
We
just
got
a
to
nice
keep it
way to
rolling.
kick
Let
things
us know.
around.
Let us know what you think.
All right, peeps. We'll see you out.
Stellar.
We'll see you later.
Glad you made it, Seth.
Hey,
Seacrest out.
this has been great,
We
guys.
need,
Seacrest.
Loving it.
we need presenting
Deuces.
sponsors, and we need.
Yes, we do.
We need, I don't feel like we're legitimate until I like stop, like Ben Shapiro, and
Have a
say,
word.
we'll talk about that. But first, I want to tell you about SeatGeek. You know,
My watch
you
is
know,
got like a watch line.
Yeah.
brought to you by ZipRecruiter.
So if you're watching this and you are looking for a sponsorship opportunity, we're your guys.
This is a
That's what
great
I'm saying.
opportunity.
Let
Are
us
we?
know.
What if Planned Parenthood
Listen, there's a
calls and
vetting process.
I am
Send us an
not-
application.
there are-
Andy.broad@kingchurch.cc.
I can't be bought. There are, I'll take your money if you're, but some no.
No.
Right. We'll have a conversation.
No, we won't.
Email us and we'll have a conversation.
With Planned Parenthood?
Well, we'd be dignified enough to respond to their email, right? If they emailed us. I'm not
Yeah.
saying we would. Yeah, we obviously wouldn't accept everybody, but we will respond to everybody's emails who email us with a decision.
Yeah.
That's fair to say,
it would
right?
It would say,
Depending on who it is.
No.
Heck no.
Heck
That's
to the no.
No.
Heck no.
That's a meme.
To the no.
Oh, man.
Look it up.
Yeah, look it up.
It's been
killer.
good,
This
guys.
went sideways.
It's gonna go sideways.
Let's get out.
We're saying we want sponsorships. We don't really. But anyway,
Yes.
you guys are great. Thanks for listening.
Yes.
Love justice.